Hi, future helpers. It's Mr. Farr in the flesh. I had started using these video lectures in another online class. It's the new current issues in addiction, the online class we started this fall, and we're focusing in that class on opioids, particularly heroin, for those of you who aren't taking the class. We're going to discuss it in pharmacology, and it may be a class, if you're interested in that you want to sign up for next semester. In any case, the students kind of like the videos, so I thought I would try it in this class as well, and you can let me know what you think. I've written down some notes that I just want to remind you of as we finish up with Module 1 and we head into Module 2. First of all, congratulations to you all. Hopefully you have found a flow in the class and a schedule that works for you to get all of the work done and in on time. That's so important in an online class. So here are some things just to remember and reminders that I usually type out, but I'll just tell you. First of all, the discussion boards. Super important in online classes because that's where we kick around information and that's where the majority of your participation is going to be graded. So I've mentioned before, just make sure to put your posts and your responses in early. And also make sure you proofread your posts and responses. In the Blackboard system, the earlier posts go in at the bottom of the list. So when I grade, I always grade from the bottom up. And I would just ask you to respond that way too. Sometimes the people who are lower down get the fewest responses, and the people who have actually posted last get the most responses. So make sure you scroll down and post to our first responders, and make sure that your posts and responses are in early and that you have proofread them. Super important again in what we do in the chemical dependency field. All of your charts will be audited, sometimes by medical professionals, CDPHP, Blue Cross, Medicaid, sometimes by OASAS. They will come in and they can audit charts, and they want to make sure everything is written professionally and that it's spelled correctly, and that's not too much to ask in a medical environment. So this isn't a Mr. Farr control thing. I'm trying to train you those skills now so they will just come naturally when you get in the field. The other things, just reminders, the quizzes for every module. The study guide for your quiz will always show up during the second week of the module. Every module is 3 weeks. I just changed that up this semester. We used to have some that were 2, some that were 3. I'm trying to go all 3-week modules, so that's something new. Again, at the end of the semester, you can let me know what you think about that. And in the second week, the study guide should pop up on Tuesday. If something does not show up on Tuesday, please email me. I go in and I make changes to these courses every semester, and certain things are set to come up at certain times. If they don't, feel free to let me know and I will go in and make sure you see that. But you should have your quiz study guides the second week, and during the third week of the module, you should be able to take your quizzes. So the weeks always begin Monday night after midnight. A new week will begin, and then you have a week to get everything in until that following Monday night at midnight. If you look on the course schedule, which I have up here, that's kind of spelled out for you. In terms of the textbook and the reading, I'm going to be very blunt here. I know that in some courses the textbook is, it's pretty good and I can skim over it and I can kind of get away with not getting in there and reading what's needed. That will not work in this course. This is one of the courses that I tell the students, and I try to be very honest, there's such good information in here that you will use when you get into the counseling your counseling career. You will not be able to fake it with this information. I think in chapter 1 it was kind of a history and it gave you some background of why people use, and that was interesting. But as soon as you get to chapter 2, you can see that we're talking about a lot of brain chemistry and a lot of just biological and psychological processes within the body that you're not going to be able to fake. So make sure you take time to read the information, and I would suggest keeping this textbook well beyond the course. I have mine from 15 or 16 years ago when I took this class. Some information changes in the chemical dependency field, but much of what you're learning will not change in terms of when you take this substance, here's how it affects your body systems and your brain chemistry. That will not change much. And even though we live in a world where things can be Googled, this book will be an excellent reference and resource for you. But you need to do the reading. Okay, as we move forward, alright, so chapter 2 was really an anchor to understanding how chemicals affect brain chemistry. As we move forward, if you're ever confused, I encourage you to go back to chapter 2 and just kind of refresh your memory about what happens in the brain when mood-altering chemicals are up there. Because chapter 2 is a doozy. It's a big one and a lot of stuff is in there. Going forward, our chapters will be much more specific, and chapter 3 is a good example of that. We're talking about uppers or stimulants and what they do to body chemistry and brain chemistry. That's the way the chapters from here on in will be set up. So as we get into chapter 3, we are talking about stimulants and uppers. The first discussion board is really to get you thinking about how much America loves uppers and why we love our stimulants. So looking for your opinions, looking for you to get in and just think about the role of stimulants in our culture, and then we'll get into more of how they affect the body, short and long-term effects in the body. And something that's very important for you to be thinking about as a counselor is, why would a patient be attracted to stimulants? Why do people use stimulants? Some of the answers are fairly straightforward, and some of the answers may get you thinking a little bit more, because we're talking about a classification of drug that goes from caffeine, which would be a kind of a weaker stimulant, all the way to cocaine and amphetamines, which are much stronger. But we have to remember we're in the same ballpark in terms of classification of substance. And why would someone be attracted to that? What is the payoff they're getting from this chemical? Good question to ask yourself as a counselor about every patient that comes in front of you. Certain people are attracted to certain effects that these chemicals give them. And we'll discuss that more as we go forward. So, I'm going to keep these lectures short but sweet. I think my video times out at about 7 or 8 minutes. So here's some final tips. Read the book. Don't shortchange yourself on the book. Post and respond on discussion board early, and proofread your posts and responses. And lastly, talk about what you're learning. To friends and family members, people seem pretty interested in discussions about chemical dependency and treatment. And for you, as a beginning clinician and a student, this really helps you to get your to get your speeches down, to get your language down, to become comfortable in talking about these concepts, and it also helps you to learn it. One of the great parts I love about teaching this material is that it constantly refreshes my memory and it keeps me sharp, so when I go in there and I counsel for groups, the information is right front and center in my brain. Because as we'll be learning, and as we learned about with memory centers and dendritic spines, sometimes your memory needs a little reminder of some kind to bring back information. Talking about it with others certainly will do that. I hope you're enjoying the course. I'm certainly enjoying your discussion board posts. I'll be looking at your reaction papers over this next week. Please give me until next Tuesday to grade everyone's reaction paper, and I will give you specific comments and tips on what I'm looking for to go forward. I'm usually pretty lenient on the first reaction papers, but it's basically the same thing I said about posts and responses. Professional language, and watch the typos, and do the reading, and you'll do just fine. So, I look forward to reading your posts, responses, and reaction papers, and I will post another video in the next couple weeks. Thanks, enjoy.